Man, these Lindor chocolates are great. They sure help keep you going throughout the day. Anyways, today we got a special little bike on the list. It is a 1983 Honda Rebel 250 CM250C. It's a custom. 1 year only with the belt drive. It's a 250cc dual cylinder engine, dual exhaust, single carburetor. My father-in-law actually got this thing going a couple of years back. This is the year my old lady's gonna get her Class 6 license. So she's probably gonna ride this for a few weeks and then we're gonna throw her on a Harley. But we're gonna go through this thing. I see we got a little fuel leak in here. Hopefully it's not a hole in the tank. Looks like it is, got the paint peeling. But yeah, we're gonna get this old girl fired up, check the fluids, put a battery in it, and go from there. So yeah, the important thing we're gonna do here is pull this dipstick out, check the oil. That oil is nice and clean. So we got one oil. I'm gonna throw a battery in this old girl, see if she'll fire up. Turn the fuel on. We got some fuel leaking, so we're gonna pull that carburetor off, pull the bowl off, clean the main jets, the low speed jets, make sure the fuel needle's not stuck, clean the accelerator pump out, and hopefully that solves that problem. We'll put a fuel filter in between too. If this tank is so rusty on the inside that we've got a hole in there, should probably put a filter in there because there'll be some rust in the tank. It's pretty easy to get off. So we just put a standard bolt in here. So we've got 2 1/2-inch nuts here that are jammed up against each other to pull the seat off. So we're gonna pull that carburetor off. It's always easier to get the air cleaner lid out of the way. Kind of see where your bolts are. There's a 10mm bolt here, and there's 2 on the back side through the battery tray, and then we can move that air box a little bit to wiggle that carburetor out of there. Get the air box out, we got to loosen this rear shock mount, and there's a 10mm bolt here. Pull the chain or the belt guard off. You should be able to yank that air box right out of there to get all the bolts out. There's a vent on the top, which will help slide it out. Jump over to the right side, loosen the nuts on the bottom of our idle and throttle cables. So we can pull them out of there. And then there'll be a choke cable as well we got to loosen to get out of there. Carburetors. I know lots of you guys might be scared of carburetors. And it took me a long time to figure out how the carburetor worked properly as well. I didn't go to school for any of this, so you know, it takes talking to guys and cleaning a lot of them to see the internals and how they actually work. Basically, they're pretty easy. Take them apart the way you put them together. Make sure that when you take them apart, here, this is the fuel bowl we're taking off. You guys can see there's a bunch of sludge and crap in the bottom. Rust and gummed up fuel. Also, when you take these carburetors apart, don't just take a piece out and start blowing air through it. Because if you take a little air bleed screw out or something like that, there might be a little O-ring in there you're blowing halfway across the shop. So take your time. So you can see these jets. It's really hard to see how small the holes are. Here we have our intermediate jet. You might be able to see, I don't know, cameras. Those holes are so small in that intermediate jet you can't even see them. Make sure when you take this carburetor apart, you lay everything out in order the way it came out. Your air screw, spring, washer, and an O-ring. Don't blow air through there if you don't get that O-ring out carefully. Here's the bottom half of the accelerator pump, the fuel side. You can kind of see how thick that fuel is. That's gelled up fuel and rust. in the accelerator pump. You can see all the main parts of our carburetor. Here's our main body, our slide with the needle, the spring for your slide. Don't pull on this spring and stretch it. You're gonna screw it up. Here's your float. Anytime you pull something out, you can soak it in gas overnight, but hold it up to a light and see if you can see fuel in there. If you see fuel in your float, you know it's leaking, it's no good. Here's your main fuel needle jet. You want to have a good look at the rubber tip on the end. Make sure that it doesn't have a ridge in there, and make sure that the spring on the end where the float pushes is free. Now we're going to take all these pieces and clean them up real nice. This is the air bleed screw, I guess you'd call it. Anyways, that's what I call it, don't really matter. If it's on the engine side of the carburetor, when you screw it in, you're giving it less air. Sorry, when you screw it in, you're giving it less fuel. When you screw it out, you're giving it more fuel. If it's on the intake side, it's the reverse. So you're taking away or adding air. Usually the baseline setting on an air bleed screw is lightly seated and then about 2.5 turns out. So I usually set them at about a 2 1/4, and we're usually pretty close. And now we got our carburetor cleaned up. Put her back in there, hook up your cables. Make sure when you hook up your choke cable, you have a little bit of free play. Make sure that when you open up hook up your throttle cables, when you open up your throttle, make sure that you have a little free play. Throttle comes back on its own, and make sure that your throttle opens up all the way. All right, so now we got our carburetor back in there. We've got a jerry can just hooked up to the carburetor with some fuel in it. The carburetor's not leaking fuel now because we cleaned all the rust out of it, so the needle can seat up. We're using a jerry can because the tank has been sent out for a liner. So let's pull the choke open, turn the key on, and see what happens. Oh, we got a dead battery. That's what's happening. Now we got another battery, which is also pretty old, and we're going to try that. Not bad for not running in 5 years or so. You can see she's smoking a little bit, but that'll probably clear up after a few minutes of running. You can see the rings are seating up. They're clearing up a little bit. Accelerator pump is working. If it wasn't, it would fall on the face when you open the throttle. See how it starts after it's warmed up. Well, I'd say that's pretty good. So we're gonna roll this bike off the lift for now. And as soon as we get the tank back on, we're gonna get this bike out the door and go for a ride. So thanks for watching up until now. I'll show you guys a little video later as we take it for a ride, do a couple wheelies. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.